Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Josh here, and today I'm super excited because we're going to take a look at the Laney Ironheart amp sim, available from Aurora Dsp. Now, I have always wanted one of these in plugin format. Ever since I got into the plugin world, I've always loved the tone and character that you can get from the Laney Ironheart. Bands like Freak Kitchen are the first ones that come to mind when I think of how this amp can sound and how you can manipulate it to sound huge and have its own thing going on. It's not just the high gain monster one-trick pony. The dynamic controls we have in the power amp section and the ways that we can manipulate the EQ and all that, it's really awesome. And this full suite has some extra things that we get to take a look at that are going to make it even better. So let's dive right into it and check out this amazing plugin from Aurora Dsp. All right, everyone, here we are in Fruity Loops with the Laney Ironheart amp sim loaded up, and we're going to take a listen to how it sounds right out of the box. This is their default preset here. This is how they wanted it to sound straight from the get. Sounds really good, really good. There's a lot of beef there that we could really take advantage of and get some great character and body out of this amp. And that's what I love about it, is it just doesn't sound like anything else that we've really had a chance to mess with on here. And that's why I've always wanted one of these amplifiers, because they just have their own thing going on and it sounds really good. Let's take a look at the interface and then we'll talk about a few sounds here. So starting with the Stomp section before the amp, you have two pedals to choose from. You have both of them by Black Country Customs. And the first one is the Steel Park Boost pedal. So you have your typical drive and volume controls here. I will say these are very hot on the output, and less is more with these pedals. If you approach it like a typical Tube Screamer or Maxon drive and just crank the volume on it, you may find it's a little too much. So take this one with a little more finesse, but don't be afraid of it. And then you have the Monolith pedal, which is a distortion pedal, and you can really add some cool elements to your sound with a little or a lot of that extra distortion. So those are your two choices up front. Then you have the amp face itself, where you're going to spend most of your time, and there's a few features that are pretty cool up here. So you have a lot of presets to choose from, which is nice, a lot of great places to start your tone journey and kind of get inspired by the things that are already in there, or you can save your own, make your own, etc. Then there's this undo feature, which is really cool. Let's say I'm jamming along. Right, some cool rock and roll, and then I'm like, you know, I want to take the treble down a little bit. So of course we just kind of start doing stuff, and then we try it again. And I'm like, you know, that's not really where I want it, but I want to go back to what I had, but I forgot because I wasn't taking notes. Well, undo has got you, because you hit one button and you're right back to where you started. So that is a really cool feature that could come in handy. Then you also have a tuner on the top right here, so you can get all tuned up and ready to rock. Then you have a performance and quality switch here. This is like an oversampling option. If you can spare the CPU space or CPU speed, then go for it. Then you have a noise gate down here, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and turn that up a little bit here just to kind of quell some of that noise. And this guitar is wanting to make some sound, so we'll just have to keep an eye on it. Then you have your signal chain, of course. And everything is really easy to see, really easy to access, and the layout of this is kind of, I would venture to say, becoming the norm or the standard for a lot of these plugins coming out, and that's a good thing because that makes it really easy to navigate and just kind of jump into and go for it. So let's take a look at the cab section here. So the cab section is really well done, and it sounds really great, and it's feature packed. There's two cabinets to choose from. You have the LA412, which is the Laney cab with the Celestians, and then you have the GS 4x12 with the Laney speakers. I guess it's their own speakers, right? And they both sound different, and they both sound really good. So that's a great place to start. So you'll notice as you switch between them, they look a little different. That's a nice touch. I always enjoy that. And then you have 4 mics to choose from on each side, which is cool, pretty industry standard, if you will, the 421, the 121, the 57. And then you have this Tube 47, which is cool. I think we'll use that for the clean stuff and maybe some solo stuff to add a little body. And then you can grab the mics and manipulate them at your leisure. So, of course, everything's going to change as you change the position. You can also change the angle of the microphone with this control here to get that more off-axis sound if you want a little darker sound. So that's pretty cool. And if we go over here, you'll actually hear this a little bit more dramatically because we're on that microphone more. So let me just get it back to how we had it. And then you can blend them with this control down here. So depending on what you're after, you can get there. And then you also have this cool thing here, the IRDX technology from Bogren Digital. And that basically allows the emulation of what the speaker's movement would sound like at really high volumes and kind of puts some more authenticity into the sound. Now that's a very tip of the iceberg explanation of it. It's much cooler than I made it sound just now, and it's really, really powerful. Maybe we'll do a video on that one day. But the air control right next to it does this. So kind of like in the Goblin plugin, it adds a little bit more presence to the sound, and we don't have to adjust anything else if we don't want to. So that's pretty cool. You can also export your own IR here. If you create one that you like, you can export it, and that's pretty dang cool. I don't think I've seen that before in a plugin like this. So more cool stuff from Aurora Dsp. Moving on to the effects section, you have kind of a rack style effects section here. You have a 10-band EQ. You turn on and off with that little red light. And then you have a high and low pass filter. You have a limiter, which acts like a multi-band compressor kind of, if you want to control some of those frequencies, especially the low end. So if I dial this up a little bit, that low end starts to be more under control, as opposed to turning it off and having this sound. So there's a little more low end there because we don't have anything controlled. So this is a nice touch. It acts like that, like I said, that multi-band dynamics compressor to tame some things if you want to, and you don't have to do anything post, which is cool. Then you have a delay here, and the delay has 3 different modes, analog, slap, and digital. I like to keep it on the digital, and I think the delay in this plugin sounds really, really nice. It's got a very nice decay to it, which is an important thing for what I like to play. Very nice decay on that, so this is a good delay. And then you have your reverb, of course, if you want to use that. Sounds good. And so there you go with the effects. So now going back to the amp face here, you have a lot of controls going on the front, but they're not as intimidating as you might think. First thing to think about is the pre-boost here, and I'll show you a preset I made to kind of demonstrate that a little better. So I have kind of a crunch preset here, and we're using the pre-boost, but you'll notice that it's at 0. Well, how does that do anything? I'll show you. Even with it off, you have, well, I guess with it off, you have this sound. Right? And then when you turn it on, even if it's at 0, see that double zeros? You still get a little different tonality out of it. And even if you bump it up to just, let's say about a 1 here, you can hear the subtleties in the difference of that sound. It's a little brighter on the high end, and it gives it a little more cutting power. So I like the pre-boost. Basically, I just use it as on or off. I really don't go crazy with dialing that in. I think if you're gonna use a drive pedal on it, then you really don't want to use much of this at all. But if you're going to take the drive pedal off, let's say, and then use it, you might, this is without anything. It's pretty chunky still, but it's not quite where we want it. So we can turn this on, and now we can get away with using a little more of that pre-boost without having it so overloaded. So the pre-boost is very powerful, and again, less is more in my humble opinion. As we continue down the line here, we can see that the EQs have the center point as 0, and then you make your cuts and pulls from there, kind of an active EQ, almost like on the PV-XXX. And that means pretty sensitive control, so I don't really go too crazy on them. And then over here in the power amp section, this is where we're really going to shape the tone. So think of this like you can start to build the foundation of your tone with the power amp section and then fine tune with the EQ. So for instance, if I want kind of a more beefy sound out of it, I'm going to use the dynamics control to get that. So this is at a 4.7. But I want a little more low end, I'm going to turn that up a little bit. And then, of course, the more we go, you know, we're starting to get into some pretty high territory here. So the dynamics control is a great place to start, and I think I liked it right about here. And then I might use my treble control to boost that a little bit, or maybe give it a little more mid. And you can notice these are real small adjustments. We're not going too crazy over here. So that's kind of your low end adjustment. And then your tone control affects a lot of the high end. So listen to the sweep on this. Pretty dramatic. So there's that, and I'm gonna hit the undo button to go right back where I was. So there's using that feature, right? That's pretty cool. So let's say I like the tone a little more hot, but I want to take just some of that treble out. So we're going to be using these in tandem. Again, these are your broad strokes, your foundation builders, and these are your fine tuners over here to get where you want. And then your watts control is basically like a volume control. So that's what you're going to get out of that. So anyway, this is just kind of an example of a crunch tone and what the pre-boost does and how these EQs are set up. Again, the power amp section is kind of the hidden gem of this amplifier because it allows for so many different dynamics. Let's take a look at a more aggressive tone here. A little bit of a more chunky tone, if you will. So it sounds really good. Again, kind of a boxier sound on that low end, but really chunky, and again, a lot of width, a lot of body. And of course, we can dramatically change that as we go. So for this preset, you'll notice I don't have any stomp on. I just have the pre-boost on at all the way 0, just for a little bit of that extra help, because the gain in this sounds really nice, and there's always plenty on tap, if you will. So again, my EQ adjustments are pretty minimal, and I have the gain kind of right in the center, or excuse me, the volume right in the center here. And then my dynamics and tone are both pushed just a little bit because I really want the amp to speak for itself. And that's what I love about the Laney Ironheart, is just that beef, man. I keep saying the beef, but maybe I'm hungry, but that's what the first word that comes to mind for me. So again, using your dynamics, tone, and watts control to shape your sound is going to be really important. Let's talk about a quick little clean tone here. You know, nothing too crazy, just kind of demonstrating the clean channel. Now over here, you'll notice that the switch is flipped down to the rhythm, but then we have the clean selection over on the left, and then we can adjust everything from there. And as we switch this up, you'll notice the EQs go back to where they were and all that good stuff. So you're not in any danger of messing it up, if you will. So let's take a quick listen to this. Notice that the dynamics and tone are a lot different on these ones than, say, the rhythm presets we just demonstrated. So on the single coil, this is kind of where we're at here. So that sounds really nice. And you'll notice for this one, there's a little bit of breakup in there. I just like how this amp kind of adds a little bit of grit to that clean tone. But if you want to play it really soft, you can still get that nice clean tone out of it. So, you know, nice and clean, and you can of course use your different controls to shape that how you want. But that's just a little example of the clean channel. And what I might do on this actually is kind of boost the bass a little, take some of the treble out. And I think I'm going to take the tone down just a little bit, just listening to it now. And just with those minimal adjustments, let's see how that affected it. Yeah, I kind of like that better. So again, that's where the fun of this amp is. There's just lots of things to choose from to shape your sound. We'll talk about a lead tone real quick, and then we'll kind of wrap this up here. What I like to do is really let the amp speak for itself and do what it does best, and that is offer a lot of clarity and really push through. And you'll notice the adjustments I've made here are pretty minimal. The dynamics is pulled back a little bit, and the tone is pushed just a touch, and then I'm using the built-in reverb on the amp and then a little delay on the back end. So really good for that harmonic stuff and really cutting through. And again, this amp just has it right off the bat, for me anyway, when it comes to the lead stuff. And everything that I like to do with harmonics and even using the tremolo on the other guitar, it just really, really does well for everything I need it to. So pretty simple stuff, but again, it just sounds good. So that's kind of the Laney Ironheart in essence. Is the simplicity is where the most sweetness is for me in this plugin, because you can take it a lot of places, but if you know what you want out of it and you're willing to just ask it to do that, it will do that for you. Does that make sense? If you want that rock and roll, really big, really wide character in your guitar tone, the Laney Ironheart can do it for you, and it can do it in a way that other amps simply just can't do. So if that's something you're into, you're gonna love this plugin. Aurora Dsp really knocked it out of the park with this one and gave us access to something really cool, really unique, and I think this is going to be something that I use a lot moving forward in various things that I do. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed our little presentation here today. I appreciate you hanging out with me, and we'll see you on the next video.